I want you to just close your eyes for a second and imagine the end of the world.
Right.
And I am not talking about the cinematic, Michael Bay explosion fest where Will Smith punches an alien, the music swells, and everything's just neatly wrapped up in 2 hours.
Yeah. No, we're talking about the real deal here.
Exactly. The real deal. A slow, grinding, systemic decay. Think about the power grids flickering out and then, well, just staying dark. Not for an hour. Forever.
It's completely gone.
Completely. Think about the supply chain snapping. The grocery store shelves in your neighborhood picked absolutely clean in an afternoon.
Which happens fast.
Oh, incredibly fast. And then you have that cold, creeping realization dawning on everyone on your street that help is absolutely not coming. It's an epic clusterfuck of unprecedented proportions. A total unspooling of the social fabric.
It's terrifying just to conceptualize.
It is. Now, while you are sitting there running the terrifying mental arithmetic of how you'd keep your family alive, how you'd find clean drinking water without a faucet, how you'd defend your own front door, I want to pivot your attention to a very select group of people.
Right. The people who aren't just imagining this.
Exactly. Because right now, a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires, tech titans, and hedge fund managers are actively, quietly, and honestly extravagantly preparing for it.
Yeah, they've been doing it for a while now.
And their preparation involves spending tens of millions of dollars to build literal subterranean luxury palaces, to ride out the apocalypse in absolute comfort.
It is a phenomenon that has been quietly accelerating for the better part of a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
And it fundamentally changes how we need to look at the people currently running our global economy.
100%.
What we're doing today in this deep dive is unpacking what is often referred to in these highly insulated circles as the Aotearoa Exit.
The Aotearoa Exit.
Yeah, this is the hyper-exclusive, insanely expensive trend of the global ultra-wealthy buying up vast tracts of land and burying literal military-grade doomsday bunkers in New Zealand.
And let's be totally clear right out of the gate here. The mission of this deep dive is not just to gawk at billionaire real estate porn.
No, absolutely not.
We aren't here to do a virtual tour of a tricked-out basement with a pool table. We have gathered the intelligence, the exact tech specs, the twisted psychological profiles, and honestly, the glaring, almost hilarious vulnerabilities of this entire strategy.
Because the vulnerabilities are massive.
Oh, they're huge. We are going to dissect the luxury lifeboat mindset.
Right.
We need to understand the terrifying geopolitical and technological math that is driving these people underground. And ultimately, we are going to expose the fatal flaws in these techno-feudal wet dreams.
Because look, this is not just about eccentric rich people buying expensive toys. When you dig into the data, it reveals a profound underlying crisis of confidence. These are the architects of our modern world. The individuals who have built the digital and financial architecture we all rely on, and their actions suggest a concrete belief that the system they constructed is inherently fragile.
That's the scary part.
It is. They are preparing for what they clinically refer to as systemic collapse. So we need to look at the geography, the engineering, the ideology, and the profound hypocrisy at play here.
Okay, let's unpack this geography first, because it is wild to me why New Zealand. You look at a map and you think, okay, it's gorgeous. Mountains, fjords, hobbits. A great place to shoot a fantasy epic.
Sure.
But these guys aren't dropping $10 million just to look at the scenery out of a periscope. They are looking at brutal, unforgiving geographic math. New Zealand is essentially the VIP lounge at the end of the goddamn world.
The VIP lounge, I like that.
It is over 1,000 miles from the nearest continent, which is Australia. In a global meltdown, that distance isn't just a flight time. It is a massive physical buffer, a literal ocean moat, a buffer against refugee flows, against the immediate spread of biological threats, and against direct involvement in Northern Hemisphere conflicts. But I have to ask you, looking at the sheer cost and effort involved, is this actual strategic genius on their part, or are these guys just paying an astronomical premium to die a little further away from the rest of us?
It's a really fascinating question, and to answer it, we have to look at the concept of the modern Ararat.
Ararat, like the mountain.
Yeah, Ararat being the biblical resting place of Noah's Ark after the flood. In elite survivalist circles, New Zealand occupies this exact narrative role, a place of ultimate refuge.
Wow. Yeah.
And yes, it is grounded in some very hard strategic math, specifically regarding the models for a nuclear winter.
Okay, walk me through that.
So if we look at the atmospheric models for a major nuclear exchange, let's say between the US and Russia or even India and Pakistan,
Right.
the primary targets and therefore the subsequent firestorms, are overwhelmingly concentrated in the northern hemisphere. The models show something horrifying: an injection of roughly 150 teragrams of soot directly into the stratosphere.
Wait, hold on. A teragram. Let's just pause and visualize that, because human brains aren't built to understand numbers that big. What does 150 teragrams of soot actually mean for the sky above us?
Well, a teragram is 1,000,000 metric tons.
Jesus.
Yeah. So we are talking about 150 million metric tons of microscopic carbon and ash being blasted upward. And the crucial part here is the stratosphere.
Because it's so high up.
Exactly. When cities burn in a nuclear firestorm, the heat is so intense that the smoke doesn't just stay in the lower atmosphere, the troposphere, where our weather happens. It gets lofted high above the cloud line.
Meaning the rain can't touch it.
Precisely. Once it's up there, the sun heats the black soot, lofting it even higher.
Yeah.
There is no rain in the stratosphere to wash it out. It just sits there, blanketing the globe, physically blocking solar radiation from reaching the surface.
So it's basically a permanent global eclipse.
That's a good way to put it. And that 150 teragrams of stratospheric soot would plunge global temperatures by an average of 8 degrees Celsius for a period of 4 to 5 years.
8 degrees.
Now, an 8-degree drop might not sound catastrophic when you're just looking at your daily weather app.
Yeah, you just put on a jacket.
Right, but globally, an 8-degree drop means the complete obliteration of traditional growing seasons across North America, Europe, and Asia. The frost-free growing period drops to 0.
So nothing grows, period.
It is total, unmitigated agricultural collapse. But due to atmospheric circulation patterns, the way the winds move across the equator, and the vast thermal mass of the surrounding southern oceans acting as a giant temperature buffer, the models project that the southern hemisphere would fare differently.
Okay.
New Zealand, specifically, might only experience a 5 degrees Celsius drop.
Which is still a catastrophe. A 5-degree drop means mass starvation almost everywhere. But I guess in the context of global extinction, it's the difference between freezing in the dark and just barely scraping by.
It is the ultimate apocalyptic hedge. The math tells them it's the most survivable landmass. And it goes beyond just atmospheric temperature. You have to look at the mechanics of food and energy security.
Right, because you still have to eat and keep the lights on.
Exactly. New Zealand operates on an 85% renewable electricity grid, heavily reliant on hydro and geothermal power. They have long-term autonomy from global fossil fuel markets for their basic electrical needs.
That's huge.
But the food math is where the billionaire calculus really locks in. New Zealand is a massive net exporter of calories, primarily dairy and meat.
Okay.
When researchers run the agricultural models for a nuclear winter scenario, the results are staggering. Even if crop and pasture yields in New Zealand were to drop by 61% due to the colder climate and lack of sunlight.
Which is a massive hit.
Massive. But even then, the country could still feed its entire population easily. In fact, their exported dairy alone, the milk powder, the cheese, the butter they currently ship overseas, could provide 338% of the required dietary energy for the entire nation.
Okay, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this.
Yeah.
Because they produce so much food for the rest of the world, if the rest of the world suddenly burns to ash, they can just redirect all those calories inward.
Right, they just stop exporting.
They have the power, they have the food, and they have the 1,000-mile ocean moat.
Yes. And they have what the wealthy perceive as political tranquility.
Right.
New Zealand has notoriously high social trust and stable governance. For a billionaire anticipating the collapse of civilization, they aren't just afraid of the nuclear fallout or the lack of sunlight. They are terrified of the violent internal revolution that follows economic ruin.
Because people will get desperate.
Exactly. When the supply chains snap, heavily armed populations and polarized nations will turn on each other, and specifically they will turn on the elite.
Eat the rich becomes literal.
Very quickly. These billionaires see New Zealand's social cohesion as a geographic guarantee against the kind of populist uprisings that would inevitably tear through more volatile Western nations. It is geographically isolated apocalypse insurance.
It's just wild to me.
And what's truly staggering is the scale of this paranoia. Current intelligence and surveys among wealth managers suggest that over 50% of Silicon Valley billionaires have acquired some form of contingency plan.
Wait. Over 50%?
Over half of them, yeah. Whether it's a reinforced domestic compound, a secondary citizenship, or a fully provisioned subterranean bunker.
Over half. That is deeply unsettling. Half of the people steering the global economy, the people making the technology that runs our lives, are keeping one hand firmly on the ripcord.
Yeah.
Which perfectly brings us into what exactly they're running from. Because when they sit around in Davos or in their private Slack channels, they don't call it the apocalypse. They don't call it doomsday.
No, they have a term for it.
They have this incredibly sterile clinical euphemism for the end of everything. They call it the event.
Right. The event. It's a catch-all term, and it serves a very specific psychological purpose.
It softens it.
It allows them to discuss civilizational collapse, whether it's engineered biological plagues, an electromagnetic pulse that wipes out the grid, total economic ruin, or malicious global cyber attacks, without sounding like unhinged street preachers holding cardboard signs.
Right, without sounding like a crazy person on a soapbox.
Exactly. It transforms the messy, terrifying end of human civilization into a neat technical problem. And to an engineer, a technical problem can be managed through superior engineering and vast amounts of capital.
I want to touch on one of those scenarios you just mentioned because it really illustrates how fragile our world is. An EMP, an electromagnetic pulse.
That's a big one.
We hear it in movies all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like in Ocean's 11 or The Matrix. But what does that actually mean for the average person listening right now?
Well, an EMP is a massive burst of electromagnetic energy. It can occur naturally from a severe solar storm, like the Carrington event in 1859,
Right.
or artificially from a nuclear weapon detonated high in the atmosphere. The physics of it, specifically the Compton effect, involves gamma rays hitting the upper atmosphere, stripping electrons from air molecules, and sending them hurtling down toward the Earth's surface.
Okay.
These traveling electrons create a massive, sudden magnetic field. And what that field does is induce incredibly high voltage currents in anything conductive.
Meaning anything with a microchip gets instantly fried?
Utterly destroyed. Unless it is shielded inside a specialized Faraday cage, the delicate silicon pathways in microchips literally burn out. Your smartphone becomes a brick.
It's just dead.
But it's much worse than that. Modern cars won't start because their electronic fuel injection systems and computer modules are dead.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about the car.
Yeah. The water pumps that push clean water to your city fail. The refrigeration systems in grocery stores fail. The hospital life support machines shut down. An EMP doesn't just turn the lights off. It physically amputates the technological nervous system of modern society, instantly throwing us back to an 18th century standard of living, but with none of the 18th century infrastructure or skills required to survive it.
It's a literal dark age delivered at the speed of light. And here is where it gets really interesting. And by interesting, I mean an absolute top-tier mindfuck.
Right.
The Venn diagram of the people buying these doomsday bunkers to escape the event and the people currently engineering our reality is almost a perfect circle.
It's the same people.
The AI disconnect is the most glaring hypocrisy I have ever seen. You have these individuals who run the most consequential artificial intelligence companies on planet Earth. They are the ones standing on stages, giving TED Talks, warning us about a 70% existential risk from advanced AI.
Which is a staggering number.
70%. They are telling the public, hey, this thing we are actively building might literally wipe humanity off the map. And while they are saying that, they are quietly buying the only lifeboats.
The hypocrisy is, well, it's undeniable.
So let me get this straight. They are building the torpedo, aiming it at the ship we are all sailing on, and then sneaking off to the escape pod so they don't get their feet wet.
That is the reality of the situation. And the internal safety metrics of these AI firms make it even more alarming. We are not just talking about predictive text algorithms here. We are talking about the race toward AGI.
Artificial general intelligence.
Yes, a system as smart or vastly smarter than a human across all domains. If you look at the rigorous 2024 and 2025 AI safety indexes, the grades these leading companies receive for their existential safety planning are abysmal.
How bad are we talking?
Well, Anthropic, which was literally founded on the premise of being the safe alternative and is widely considered most cautious, barely scrapes a C+ set.
A C+. For the safe guys.
Right. OpenAI, arguably the most famous and well-funded, gets a solid C, plagued by what analysts call massive mission drift. They have systematically lost or fired their core safety teams in pursuit of faster product launches.
A C grade. The team building the literal God machine, a technology they admit could end us, is operated with the academic rigor of a college freshman cramming for a midterm. Fantastic.
It gets worse. Google DeepMind sits at a C due to totally inadequate third-party evaluation protocols. Meta is sitting on an abysmal D, with significant glaring gaps in their basic risk assessment standards.
A D for meta, of course.
And then you have the deep cuts.
Yeah.
The rapidly accelerating models coming out of other jurisdictions, like Zipu AI and DeepSeek, they get solid Fs.
Fs, just straight failing grades.
They operate as total black boxes, near zero transparency, negligible existential safety frameworks. These organizations are engaged in an arms race toward human-level AI. They publicly acknowledge the catastrophic risks, and yet they have zero actionable, coherent plans for ensuring these systems remain safe and controllable once they surpass our ability to understand them.
It's madness. It is utter madness. And it's not just AI they are rolling the dice on. It's the physical planet itself.
The climate data is equally grim.
We are looking at data showing that 7 out of the 9 planetary boundaries, the fundamental life-supporting systems of Earth, like biodiversity, freshwater change, and land system change, have been breached.
7 out of 9.
Yeah. Projections for the New Zealand region alone show mean air temperatures rising anywhere from over 1 degree to potentially over 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century under high emission scenarios. The natural systems are deteriorating, amplifying risks to water and food security globally. And these guys are treating a dying planet like it's just a dynamic risk profile in an investment portfolio.
That's exactly how they see it.
Something they can bypass by digging a hole and waiting for the market to correct itself.
This brings us to a crucial psychological concept that experts call exit distortion.
Exit distortion. Okay, unpack that for me.
You have to understand how having a personal $10 million escape hatch fundamentally changes a human being's risk calculus. It creates a profound moral hazard. Think about it.
Yeah.
If you or I make a severe mistake at work, there are immediate, tangible consequences.
You get fired. You lose your house.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But if a tech titan makes a mistake that destabilizes global financial markets, or unleashes a rogue, self-replicating algorithm, or burns billions of tons of carbon, the consequences for the world are devastating. But for them,
Nothing.
their personal downside is strictly capped. They have a fortified compound waiting for them in New Zealand. When your personal risk is mitigated by a private fortress, you become far more willing to gamble with humanity's future.
Because you aren't paying the price.
Right. The bunker acts as a psychological permission structure. It allows them to aggressively push the boundaries of technology and profit without ever having to internalize the catastrophic risks they're creating for the rest of us.
They are playing Russian roulette with our heads, and they are wearing a Kevlar helmet while they pull the trigger. It is infuriating. So let's look at the helmets. Let's look at the physical architecture of exclusion.
The bunkers themselves.
Exactly. Because when I say bunker, I know you, listening to this right now, are probably picturing some corrugated steel tube buried in the backyard with a shelf full of canned beans, a couple of flashlights, and a hand crank radio.
Like a Cold War fallout shelter.
Yeah, exactly. Forget that. We are going under the hood of what a $10 million hole in the ground actually looks like. We are talking about massive subterranean mansions built by highly specialized companies like Rising S Company and Vivos.
The engineering involved in these structures is truly staggering. I mean, these are not mere shelters designed to hold you over for a weekend hurricane.
No.
They are autonomous survival habitats designed to operate completely independently for up to 5 years, supporting dozens of people. They're often manufactured in places like Texas, constructed from massive plates of reinforced steel, shipped by sea across the world, and buried up to 4 meters deep in isolated rural New Zealand.
And the technical specifications read like something out of a military contractor's dream journal.
They really do.
Oh, absolutely. Let's rattle off the hardware here because it is mind-bending. You want blast resistance, try 20 megaton blast resistance.
Which is massive.
For context, the bomb dropped on Nagasaki was about 21 kilotons. A 20 megaton blast is 1,000 times more powerful. These bunkers are designed to withstand the overpressure shock waves of direct or near-miss thermonuclear strikes.
Right, and the air filtration systems are equally extreme. They aren't using the HEPA filter you bought on Amazon for your living room allergies.
Yeah, I assume a Dyson air purifier isn't cutting it against a nuke.
No, standard HEPA filters only capture physical particulate matter. They do nothing against chemical agents or certain biological threats. These bunkers utilize U.S. Navy submarine-style life support systems.
Yeah. Submarine scrubbers?
Yes, these are complex, multi-stage scrubbers. They use activated carbon to absorb chemical warfare agents like VX gas or sarin. They use hospital-grade ultraviolet arrays to irradiate and destroy the DNA of biological pathogens like weaponized anthrax.
Wow.
They are designed to pull in highly irradiated toxic surface air and pump out pure, breathable oxygen.
And what about the water? You can't just rely on the municipal pipe when the city is a crater.
No, they install 75,000-liter subterranean tanks,
Yeah.
often tapping deep into local isolated aquifers.
But what if the groundwater is poisoned?
Well, just in case the groundwater is contaminated by radioactive runoff, they run it all through reverse osmosis and UV purification systems. You could basically drink puddle water after a nuclear strike, and it would taste like Evian.
That is insane, and I'm guessing the power grid to run all these scrubbers and pumps has to be bulletproof.
Oh, the power systems are entirely triple redundant. You can't just have one generator. You have massive solar arrays on the surface that are designed to retract or camouflage themselves during an attack.
Retracting solar panels, like a James Bond villain base.
Basically.
Yeah.
And those are paired with deep-buried diesel generators and vast banks of lithium-ion batteries to ensure the life support, climate control, and most importantly, the security systems never go offline.
Right, because if the power dies, the air scrubbers die and the bunker becomes a tomb.
Exactly. And for food, they aren't relying on MREs and canned soup for 5 years. They build massive subterranean greenhouses equipped with LED hydroponic walls.
Fresh veggies underground.
They use highly controlled nutrient solutions to grow fresh plant protein, vitamins, and produce, ensuring they don't suffer from scurvy or malnutrition while waiting out the fallout.
It is essentially a sensory deprivation tank for billionaires, equipped with biometric locks and a Cabernet cellar.
The wine vaults are a real feature, yeah.
Because that is the other wild part. The underground resort aesthetics. The psychological engineering here is just as meticulous as the physical engineering.
They have to be.
Right, because they know that locking 10 people in a concrete box for 5 years, no matter how safe it is a recipe for absolute insanity. You would lose your mind.
A cabin fever would set in instantly.
So they trick the brain. They use total acoustic and thermal insulation. The floors are often built on specialized springs to decouple them from the earth so you never feel the tremors of earthquakes or the vibrations of bombs dropping above.
Wow, floating floors.
Floating floors. They install bowling alleys, wine vaults, massive home theaters, indoor swimming pools. The lighting systems are designed to mimic the circadian rhythm of natural sunlight to prevent depression.
Incredible.
It's designed to make the passage of time feel gentle, like you're just on a really long, exclusive vacation while the rest of humanity burns to ash.
What you're describing is a philosophy of curated survival.
Curated survival.
Yeah. They view the apocalypse not as a shared human tragedy to be mitigated, but as something unruly and unpleasant to simply be ridden out in comfort.
Just a little storm passing by.
Right. But it extends beyond just physical comfort. It ventures into an almost godlike desire for cultural preservation. These bunkers are equipped with massive physical book libraries, art archives, family records, and even cryopreservation units for their own DNA.
You're kidding. DNA freezers?
Yes. One specific installation we looked at even modeled a personal seed vault after the global seed vault in Svalbard.
Like they're rebooting the server of humanity, but they only want to upload their own specific file.
That's a perfect analogy.
They don't just want to survive. They want to emerge from cold storage after the dust settles and literally remake human culture in their own image. It is unparalleled arrogance.
It's a huge God complex.
But here is the thing that makes me laugh, honestly. If prepping is supposed to be a team sport, if survival throughout human history has always relied on community, mutual aid, and working together, what happens when their neighbors, the local New Zealand farmers who have been struggling through the fallout on the surface, realize there's a 5-star hotel buried under the local sheep farm?
That is the critical blind spot in their entire worldview. Their strategy is a complete engineering of time, completely ignoring the chaotic, desperate human element above ground.
They just pretend the other people won't be a problem.
Right. They're trying to lock out the unruly masses because their approach to survival is rooted in a deeply cynical political philosophy. To truly understand why they build these blast-proof biometric doors, we have to look at the mindset that believes those doors are necessary in the first place.
Right. It's not just about physical safety. It is a sprawling, almost religious ideology. It's the philosophy of the sovereign individual.
Yes, the sovereign individual.
This is the mindset driving the Aotearoa Exit, and it tracks back heavily to a 1997 libertarian manifesto called exactly that. The Sovereign Individual, written by James Dale Davidson and Lord William Rees-Mogg.
A very influential book in Silicon Valley.
Extremely. The core absolute belief of this text, and the tech bros who treat it like a sacred text, is that the democratic nation-state is effectively a criminal cartel.
A criminal cartel.
Yes. They believe that governments, taxes, and shared social contracts are obsolete, parasitic structures. The book prophesied that digital technology and encrypted money would finally allow the true elite, the cognitive elite, the wealth creators, to bypass the state entirely and live as sovereign entities, unbound by the laws of the masses.
It is a radical, foundational rejection of the social contract, and no one embodies this more clearly than Peter Thiel.
Oh, Thiel is the poster child for this.
Absolutely. The Thielian vision views the democratic project of shared governance not as a triumph of civilization, but as a cumbersome obstacle to technological transformation.
Just slowing them down.
Right. This is a class of builder who wants to aggressively shape the world with their algorithms and platforms, but actively refuses to fully inhabit the world they are creating. Thiel has a well-documented obsession with New Zealand, treating it essentially as his personal Middle-earth.
Literally, he names everything after Tolkien.
Yeah, he's literally named at least 5 of his companies: Palantir, Valar Ventures, Mithril Capital after elements from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings.
He views a sovereign nation as a fantasy novel setting, a pure blank canvas for his techno-libertarian experiments.
It's his playground.
And let's not forget how he secured his golden ticket to this sanctuary. He managed to get a highly controversial New Zealand citizenship granted after spending a grand total of 12 days in the country.
12 days, over the course of 5 years.
12 days. And it was kept entirely secret from the public for years. It just proves to them that everything, even sovereign citizenship, is just a commodity to be purchased if you have enough capital.
The media theorist Douglas Rushkoff has spent significant time interacting with these individuals.
Oh, I've read about this. It's fascinating.
Yeah, he was literally invited to a private desert resort to speak to a group of these billionaires about the future of technology. And instead, they just peppered him with questions about how to survive the apocalypse.
Like, where do I put the bunker? How do I pay the guards?
Exactly. From that experience, Rushkoff coined a brilliant term: the insulation equation.
The insulation equation.
The ultimate goal of these titans is to earn enough money to completely insulate themselves from the ecological, social, and economic fallout of how they earn that money in the first place.
Wow. It is a profound, tragic paradox. It's like they want to build a car that goes so incredibly fast it can outrun its own toxic exhaust.
That's a great way to think about it.
They treat civilizational progress like a video game. They've mined all the resources, triggered all the catastrophic boss fights, and now they've decided the only way to win the game is to find the goddamn escape hatch, hit the button, and pull the ladder up behind them.
Game over for everyone else.
Right. But I have to stop here and just push back on this entire premise, because it sounds totally delusional. Can you actually amputate yourself from a complex global society, climb into a steel tube, and still expect your subterranean hydroponic tomatoes to grow?
The short answer is no.
Okay, good.
And the long answer requires us to look at the work of the anthropologist and historian Joseph Tainter, specifically his seminal 1988 analysis, The Collapse of Complex Societies.
I'm not familiar with that one. What does Tainter argue?
Well, Tainter provides the absolute mathematical and historical reality check to this billionaire fantasy. He argues that human societies are fundamentally problem-solving organizations.
Okay, makes sense.
When a society faces a problem like resource scarcity, external threats, or administrative bloat, it solves it by adding a layer of complexity.
Like inventing a new technology to extract deeper oil, or adding a new bureaucratic department to manage a crisis.
Exactly. But Tainter's law shows that this creates a curve of diminishing marginal returns. Each new layer of complexity costs more energy and resources to maintain, but provides less and less actual benefit.
So it gets bloated.
Extremely. Think of it like a startup company. When it's 3 people in a garage, it is incredibly agile and efficient. When it grows to 5,000 people, you suddenly need HR departments, middle management, compliance officers, and IT support.
The red tape takes over.
Eventually, the company is spending 80% of its energy just maintaining its own internal rules rather than innovating. Now, scale that up to global civilization. Eventually, the society becomes incredibly rigid and overstretched. It requires massive energy subsidies just to maintain the status quo.
And then what happens?
At that terminal point, the complex structure goes from being a benefit to a massive, fatal drain. Tater calls this the dinosaur model.
The dinosaur model.
The civilization becomes a lumbering colossus, entirely locked into an evolutionary dead end, and it becomes brittle as a house of cards. The slightest shock, a severe drought, an invasion, a pandemic, or a grid failure brings the whole massive structure crashing down.
So these billionaires, they see the dinosaur model. They recognize the runaway train of complexity that they actively helped build.
Yes, the bunker is their desperate attempt to jump off the runaway train. They want to retrench into a simpler autonomous unit before the terminal point of collapse.
But they're missing something obvious.
Their fatal mistake, their profound intellectual blind spot, is believing that their high-tech, $10 million autonomous unit is actually simple or independent.
Right.
It is not. It is entirely reliant on the absolute apex of the complex society they are trying to escape.
Which leads us to what I think is the absolute biggest, most glaring, most darkly hilarious flaw in their entire master plan.
The guard problem.
Yes. Okay, let's say the earthquake doesn't crush the bunker. Let's say the air filters work perfectly. There is a massive hole in this fantasy that involves a human heartbeat. Let's talk about the hiccup of labor and the paradox of control. Because a bunker, no matter how many millions of dollars you sink into it, is not a closed thermodynamic system.
No, it requires constant input.
It requires maintenance, it requires replacement parts, and most crucially, when the starving masses show up at your hidden blast door, it requires armed, highly trained human security.
This is the critical vulnerability. It exposes the absolute fragility of relying on wealth in a post-wealth world. The billionaire preppers obsess over what is known in their circles as the guard problem.
It keeps them up at night.
It really does. Imagine the scenario. The event has happened. Gold is heavy and completely useless for eating. So, you are a tech CEO huddled in your bunker, surrounded by a team of former Navy SEALs or private military contractors you hired to protect you.
Guys who know how to kill.
Exactly.
Huh.
What exactly stops those heavily armed, highly trained killers from looking at you? A guy whose only skill was writing code for a social network, putting a bullet in your head, and taking the $10 million underground mansion for themselves and their own families.
That is the ultimate question. The power dynamic flips instantly. The guy with the gun is the CEO now. And the solutions these billionaires have seriously brainstormed when confronted with this are horrifying.
They are deeply disturbing.
It is straight up dystopian villainy. Because they can't imagine just, I don't know, being a decent, charismatic leader. They want technological fixes for a fundamentally human problem. First, they propose putting special biometric combination locks on the food supply.
Right.
The logic being, only the billionaire knows the code or has the fingerprint, so if the guards mutiny, they starve.
Which is a profound, almost childish misunderstanding of how coercion works under extreme physical stress.
Seriously.
If a highly trained soldier is starving, and his family is starving, they aren't going to just accept their fate and wait for the biometric lock to open. They will use their extensive interrogation skills to extract that code or that fingerprint from the owner by any means necessary.
Exactly. You think a Navy SEAL is going to let a guy who invented a dating app starve him out? They know how to use a blowtorch. They know how to use pliers. That lock isn't protecting you. It's making you a target.
It incentivizes torture.
Yes. So what's their next genius idea? Disciplinary collars. I am not making this up. Literal shot collars worn around the necks of their security force to enforce compliance.
With something out of a sci-fi prison movie.
I am losing my mind over the absolute sociopathy of this. I want you, the listener, to imagine you are an elite soldier. The world has ended. Everything you love on the surface is gone. And some pale tech bro points to a dog collar and says, "Put this on so I can electrocute you if you look at my wine vault." How fast are you taking that guy out?
Instantly.
Right?
You wouldn't even hesitate.
No.
It demonstrates a complete detachment from basic human psychology. And deep down, they know it's a terrible feeling strategy, which is why their ultimate fantasy is to bypass human labor entirely.
Robot guards.
Yes, they want to replace the human guards with autonomous robotic security forces, basically Boston Dynamics dogs with mounted machine guns. But they're entirely dependent on getting that technology advanced enough and reliable enough in time before the collapse happens.
God, it is so pathetic. What if the robot strips a gear? What if its optimal sensor gets dirty? You can't fix it.
Exactly. When Douglas Rushkoff met with that group of ultra-wealthy stakeholders, he listened to all these paranoid, coercive strategies, and he suggested a radical pro-social alternative.
Wait, I remember this. What did he tell them?
He told them, if you want your guards to exhibit loyalty in the future, treat them like equals right now.
Mind-blowing concept.
Right. Pay for their families to survive. Build genuine human relationships based on mutual respect, shared survival, and community, rather than hoarding ammo and designing electric fences. Human beings survive the Ice Age because we are pro-social. We cooperate.
And how did the masters of the universe react to the radical evolutionary idea of friendship?
They were visibly annoyed.
Of course they were.
They dismissed it entirely because to them, humans are not partners. Humans are messy, unpredictable variables in a spreadsheet equation that need to be controlled. They are desperately seeking technological fixes to fundamentally social problems.
It is the ultimate paradox of control. They are so desperate to maintain their self-sovereignty that they refuse to acknowledge their profound, inescapable dependency on the very labor and social structures they are seeking to exclude. The absolute hubris of trying to control human nature with a combination lock is matched only by their staggering ignorance of basic physical and economic realities. Which brings us to the final reality check. Why this whole multi-million-dollar Aotearoa Exit is ultimately going to fail. Let's shatter the illusion of the plug-and-play sanctuary, because when you do the rigorous analysis, it reveals that New Zealand is profoundly vulnerable.
It all comes back to Tainter's concept of complex dependencies.
Right, the dinosaur model.
Yes. New Zealand has a massive agricultural surplus, yes. But it is a modern industrial agricultural system. It's not millions of people plowing fields by hand, and that massive industrial machine relies entirely on global supply chains.
Break that down. What's the specific vulnerability?
Here are the brutal facts. New Zealand has zero domestic fuel refining capacity.
Zero.
Zero. The Marsden Point oil refinery, their only refinery, ceased operations a few years ago. The country is now 100% dependent on imported refined diesel to run its tractors, its transport trucks, and crucially, its backup generators.
Stop right there. I want to emphasize this. Think about the supply chain that gets your groceries to your local store right now. It involves ships, ports, trucks, and constant fuel. Now imagine trying to maintain that exact same supply chain for an entire nation thousands of miles from the nearest factory while the world is literally ending. 100% imported diesel.
It's a massive weak point.
So the ships stop coming because the ports in Asia and North America are radioactive glass. New Zealand's strategic reserves run dry in a matter of months. Without diesel, that massive agricultural machine that exports 95% of its food, it fails in a single season. The tractors stop in the fields, the massive irrigation pumps seize up, the food rots on the vine.
And it's not just fuel.
What else?
They are 100% dependent on imported medicines, vaccines, antibiotics, and replacement machinery parts. You blow a rubber O-ring gasket on your $10 million bunker's air scrubber. You can't order a new one from Texas on Amazon Prime.
No, it's gone forever.
Exactly. The belief that one can maintain a hyper-advanced, isolated industrial lifestyle when the macro system collapses is a complete fiction. Without global trade, New Zealand's technological level would rapidly regress to the 1960s or 1970s. You cannot run a triple-redundant biometric smart bunker when the industrial base required to manufacture a basic silicon microchip no longer exists on your continent.
And then there's the geographic irony. They tick to New Zealand because it's far away from the nuclear targets, completely ignoring the fact that it is one of the most seismically active places on planet Earth.
Oh, the fault lines are notorious.
It sits right on the boundary of the Pacific and Australian tectonic plates. The Alpine Fault runs right through the South Island. The ground shakes constantly. So you bury a massive, rigid concrete box 4 meters deep. What happens during an 8.0 magnitude earthquake?
The structural integrity fails.
The earth literally liquefies and shifts. The shear forces rip the concrete off the steel rebar. The disguised air intake vents, the ones carefully hidden inside fake rocks and flagpoles on the surface, they snap. They get crushed by landslides. The life support systems fail. And suddenly, your $10 million luxury fortress is just a gilded, suffocating underground tomb that you can't dig your way out of.
And the thermal issues alone.
Oh, the heat. A sealed bunker full of running diesel generators and warm human bodies generates massive amounts of heat. Thermal management in a sealed earthquake-damaged box without surface ventilation is an absolute engineering nightmare. You would slowly roast.
And beyond the sheer physical vulnerabilities of the Earth trying to crush them, there is massive legal and political pushback right now.
Right. The locals aren't just sitting back and watching this happen.
No, the local population is acutely aware of what is happening, and they deeply resent being treated as a high-end fallout shelter for foreign billionaires. In 2018, the New Zealand government, under Jacinda Ardern, actually implemented a ban on foreign property ownership.
A full ban.
Yes, specifically designed to slow down this bolt hole acquisition frenzy and protect the local housing market from hyperinflation.
Yeah, but as always, massive amounts of capital always find a way through the cracks, right?
It does. By late 2025 and into 2026, the policy was reversed to attract capital during a global economic contraction. They introduced the Active Investor Plus visa.
A golden ticket.
Basically, if you have a minimum of $5 million to pump directly into the local economy, you can buy your way past the ban. But even with the visa, it isn't a guaranteed rubber stamp.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Look at Peter Thiel again. He tried to build a sprawling, bunker-like compound, perfectly integrated into the hillsides of the South Island. And the local Queenstown Lakes Council flat out rejected his plans.
They just said no.
They told him it would ruin the natural landscape and the aesthetic of the region. It is a beautiful, ironic illustration of the tension between the sovereign individual who thinks his extreme wealth grants him ultimate autonomy and the local democratic institutions that actually control the dirt he wants to dig his hole into.
I love that so much. A local zoning board defeated the Billionaires' apocalypse plan.
Exactly. Bureaucracy wins.
So their entire master plan relies on global supply chains staying intact just long enough to deliver imported diesel for their backup generators, but broken enough that nobody bothers to check the local hills for hidden air vents. It is a fantasy. It is high-end LARPing for billionaires who have lost touch with reality.
If we synthesize all of this, the geography, the flawed engineering, the glaring AI, hypocrisy, the labor paradox, what we are left with is a profound crisis of confidence. The bunker craze isn't actually about survival in a practical physical sense. It is a physical manifestation of fear and guilt. The architects of the modern world no longer believe in the future they are actively building.
They know it's broken.
They have looked at the systems they created, the black box algorithms, the massive extraction economies, the planetary degradation, and rather than using their unprecedented power to fix them, they have decided it is beyond saving.
And that exit distortion creates a literal doom loop. Their deeply held belief that they have a personal biometric escape hatch accelerates the very risks they are fleeing.
Because the pressure's off.
Exactly. Because if you know you have a lifeboat, you aren't forced to fix the AI. You aren't forced to aggressively tackle the climate crisis. You aren't forced to address the massive social inequality tearing at the fabric of society. You can just hit the throttle, maximize your profits, and walk away when the engine catches fire.
And that is exactly why this deep dive matters.
Yeah.
It exposes the ultimate distribution of consequence in our society.
Yes.
A microscopic fraction of the global population gets to make high-stakes, civilizational bets with the lives of billions of people. They reap the massive, unimaginable financial rewards of those bets while times are good. But they are the only ones holding a hedge if the bet goes sideways.
Right.
When the complex system finally breaks, their plan isn't shared hardship, community resilience, or collective rebuilding. Their plan is a locked, blast-proof door.
And that is exactly why you, listening to this right now, need to care about this. Because they are playing with your money, your planet, and your future while holding a secret ticket to the VIP lounge at the end of the world. It's infuriating, but it is also deeply revealing about the inherent fragility of their power.
House of Cards.
Exactly. Which leaves us with one final lingering thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. If the absolute smartest, richest engineers on Earth have run the mathematical models, looked at the data, and decided that surviving the near future requires hoarding seeds in a titanium hole in the ground, maybe the real question isn't whether their incredibly flawed bunkers will hold up.
What is it then?
It's whether the rest of us are going to let them keep steering the ship while they secretly pack their bags.